Today, I'm going to unbox and take a look at and possibly give my initial impressions of Mr. President, the American Presidency 2001 to 2020, a game designed by Gene Billingsley of the G of GMT Games. This is published by GMT Games, and I want to thank GMT Games for sending me this. So I really do appreciate this. And this is an interesting title for me for various reasons. Let's go through some of them. Number one of my degrees is political science, and my emphasis was campaign and voter behavior. And with that, you can imagine that I gravitate towards and collect and play and like election games, games that deal with the presidential election or election games in general. And I'll put a link in the description to some of the coverage I've done on election games. So the presidency has always been, kind of a fascination and an interest of mine. Now, this isn't an election game. This is about being the president of the United States and all the myriad of issues and complexities and decisions and crisis and whatever that might come across that person's desk, how they have to handle it. So this is an election game. But one of my secondary emphasis in political science was the presidency. Took several classes on the presidency, including some taught by some known presidential scholars. So the presidency is either through elections or through the office itself has held my interest over time. And so this game is a natural for me to get into and take a look at. Now, I have to admit, I wasn't following this doggedly over its P500 and how it came about. I heard about it. I loosely thought, oh, maybe that's an election game, and I didn't really follow it that closely. Then, as it got past the P500 and got down the production track, I started watching some of the stuff that was coming out about it or reading some of the stuff, and it started to intrigue me more. And then when I got this in the mail, I was like, wow, okay, now I've got something here. Now let's talk about that a little bit. This is a huge bundle. Look at the size of that box. And this is a case where, size does matter. I mean, this is a huge box, and this is a huge undertaking. I've heard some people say epic, and this is epic. I mean, this is a very detailed simulation of trying to manage all the complexity, all the issues, all the different things that could come across a president's desk and how he or she would handle that. And so very, very a very huge undertaking, and I'm interested to see how they pulled it off. So as you can see here, you've got an example of the game contents here. It's for 1+ player. I think this is generally a solo game, but I think there might be, I'm interested in finding out in the rules of how it's 1+. Maybe you assign different segments to or have people play some of your cabinet members maybe. Complexity is a 5 and solitaire suitability is a 9. Let's talk about some of my initial impressions, even though I haven't opened up the box yet, but just on what I've read so far. The complexity, that might be correct. I think the overall game system itself is not overly complex. However, when it's all layered together and all the stuff that you have to track and all the different books you have to refer to go over some different processes and procedure, I think 5, it might be a little low. I mean, I think just the game itself might be a 5, but I mean, some of the basic core concepts, but I really have to say all the things that you have to do in this game and keep track of, especially for a solitaire player, I don't know. This just feels higher than a 5, maybe a 6 or 7 at least. You get an example of the board here. There's a lot of various tracks, and as I said, I'll I'll give my initial impressions on what I know, and again, don't quote me. Wait till I've played it and come back to you, or come back with a review, or watch what other people have done on it, because there's some good stuff out there, including some stuff from Mr. Billingsley himself. And here's some of the event cards that come out, and these are kind of a legacy type event. They're going to be continuing. I think back to some of my Eurogame roots, Robinson Crusoe, like how you deal with a situation makes a decision of what, if it gets dealt back into the deck, and then it might come back, later. Like if you get injured and you don't treat the wound, goes in the deck, and then later on in the game, when you pull that card again, now it's infected. So I don't know if it's exactly that same kind of concept, but it kind of reminded me of that concept, that these things, if you don't handle them, or depending on how you handle them, they're going to stick around and cause problems later on down the road. So, there's there's a lot of counters in this game. Everything's administrative marker. I mean, because you are playing a game as a president and making decisions as a president. So enough of that. Let's get in the box and see what we get, because that's what you came here for, and we need to get in here. This is a huge box. Man, and it's heavy, and so you are definitely getting passes the value test just by the sheer quantity of it. So there's the box coming off, a good thick box, and I think you're going to need a good thick box for this. So really nice touch here right out of the box. You've got some parchment type paper, from the White House. To my successor, congratulations on your election and your inauguration. So basically, this is a letter from the outgoing president to tell you of, you're in for it, right? This is you're ready to play the game. So let's have a look at that. I'm not going to read that whole thing because I want to get into the game itself. So here is the turn sequence book. And this is kind of the core of the game. This is spiral bound. I like that because you're going to be referring to this quite a bit. The covers are a little bit thicker paper. Actually, a lot of the pages are thicker paper, so that's really cool. So this is the heart of the game, is this turn sequence, and basically you're going to have your U.S. special activations. Then you're going to have activation phase 1, activation phase 2, activation phase 3, 4, and then a final activation. So you have a total of 6 activations. These are kind of setup type activations. These are the heart of the game, but they're not identical. So like here, you'll have an activation of either Russia or China. Then in activation 3, where it has Russia or China, it'll be the other one. So if you did Russia here, then it'll be China here. And there's a whole process and procedure of how you do Russia and China's activations, because they are your kind of competitors on the world stage and stirring up trouble, possibly. And so you need to deal with that. So there's a whole book for them, for those countries, on how you deal with their activation. So then the rest of these, some of these are more standard type stuff, like any actions. You have a certain number of actions that you can do, and your actions are also divided up by some of your cabinets. So for example, you can do any action. Your vice president can do a certain type of actions. Then you're going to have a chief of staff and a secretary of state and a secretary of the military, or the secretary of defense. And they're going to be able to do, military do military action, state's going to do diplomatic, and chief of staff can do, I don't know, is it domestic? I have to look up on that. But you're limited you're limited by the number of actions you have, but also by the roles in which you try to engage the actions or activate actions, right? And you might get more actions. Some of your staff might give you more actions, or some things that happen in the game might give you more actions. And so actions is how you resolve or address issues, or try to increase your status, or pass, landmark legislation, or all those kind of things. Just think of anything that a president may or could touch, you're going to be doing that. So this is going to be the whole sequence of play. So this is how this goes, and you will follow this jig-jag path. And this is this 1 year or one term? I think this is 1 year. So you're going to be doing this quite a bit of time if you want to last for 4 years, and heaven help you if you get reelected. So this is the flip book. So this is something you're going to be referring to quite a bit to as you go through your different actions, because this is going to go through the each one of those little squares there is going to have an explanation in here of how you do it and what you need to do there. Now, after you play this a few times, I imagine you're probably not going to need to refer to this every single time, because you're going to understand, oh, this is what I do, right? But this is kind of the heart of the game as you're going through each of those sections. And it also has references. There's references not only on the board, but in this book of what book you need to go to and what page you need to turn to further understand what these different things are. But there's going to be, you're going to have, the game's going to simulate, your being able to pass legislation, or what your legislative priorities, and who are your friends or enemies in Congress, and how you get stuff passed there, how you affect the economy, or how the economy affects you as far as your term and your popularity and the like. And that's really what you're trying to do in this game, is you're trying to achieve a status of, I don't know if it's called popularity or public approval, and trying to get to a certain number and compare yourself to some historic presidents over time. One of my other initial impressions, I did a little advanced look, and they limited this to historical presidents, but they didn't do anybody past 1960. I think that was a good call by Gene Billingsley and from GMT Games. There's no good that could come of getting past that point. Stick with the historic, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So I had some apprehension as I learned more about this game of, are they going to make it too political? Are they going to make it divisive? Is there going to be some slant or some leanings and the like? And so that decision of just leaving it to pre-1960 president, that was a good way to try to diffuse some of that, or to try to stay away from some of that issue. And everything I've seen so far, and again, I'm just opening up the box, but everything that I've pre-read and stuff, they really did try to keep this as neutral as possible. I mean, you're running the presidency. They kept it pretty neutral. You're going to have friends and enemies, but they're not tied to a specific party. It's just, you're going to have allies, you're going to have, detractors. And I think they've done a pretty good job of doing that so far, because then it makes it a game, and, everybody should be able to play this, no matter what your leanings or your interests. I mean, everybody wants to be president, right? So this is going to explain all those different aspects that you have in here. And, then you have, let's see here, final activation, and then end of turn cleanup. And so this is it. So this is basically kind of an interesting book here that's basically going to drive you. This is your driving book. This is going to drive you through all the different turns and sequence and how you play the game. And so this is going to be a key part of that. This is the how to play, right? So this is the how to play book, HPB. And so it might be references to this. This isn't very long. This is only 7 pages. So how to play the game is only 7 pages. So as I said, that 5 might be accurate. Man, I'm having trouble dating it. If you're just basing it off the how to play book, right? But there's a lot more to it than that. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Here's the governing manual. So that's that GM, and we saw some references in the flip book of GM page 26 or whatever. So this is where you'll refer to. So this is kind of the overall rule book. This is more of an introduction of how to play. This is the true heart of the rules, and something that you probably don't have to memorize or read through a lot. You might want to go through it at least once to be familiar with it, but there's going to be through the flip book and through some board references, they'll probably refer you back to this, and you'll get to what you need. This looks relatively weighty here. I mean, you got 48 pages, but there's index of the rules, and then there's, at the very beginning, there's a table of contents. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So just to give you an idea of, you've got some basic concepts: presidential, domestic arena, world arena, and there's a domestic arena, what's going on at home, and there's a world arena. And one of the things that some of the people that have talked about this game so far have said that, the domestic arena is where you win the game. The world arena is where you lose the game. So if you screw up and don't really keep track of what's going on in the world arena, you're probably going to lose the game, but you're not going to win the game unless you can address the domestic arena. So I find that kind of an interesting way to approach it. Here's the diplomatic arena, the military arena, and then you've got war here. So that's just an overview of some of the different areas that you're going to need to understand. Here is that crisis card I was telling you about, where the first time it comes up, you'll go to 1. The next time it comes up, it'll 2, and then 3, and it's probably going to get worse. Hence the name crisis. But these are a key part of the game, and this is a key part to replayability. I mean, every time you play, there's some different setups of how you can set up the game and different difficulty levels. And there's also kind of like, I think, a sandbox type mode. But the different setups, but more importantly, some of the cards that come up are going to be different every time. But also your decisions and how you react to some of these things is going to be different. And so there's a lot of game in this box. So this is the overall rules. And there's dual column. It's not glossy, which is nice because then it doesn't, reflect back and be hard to read sometimes. But even though it's a relatively good sized print and dual column, there's a lot in here. I'm just telling you, that's why that 5 doesn't look quite right. I'm going to question that 5 on complexity. A lot of stuff going on here. Here's your presidential master actions. So as I said, there's a lot of different types of actions. These are the presidential type actions, and they're going to explain those. You got key cabinet members, and they're going to be able to do certain actions. You've got cabinet focus, and that's going to help you. What you put as a priority is going to be more likely to take place, and so that's a key part of the game. Again, there's every place you look, there's a decision you need to make, and that decision is going to affect something down the road that you need to take a look at. Greater Society Initiative, here's Supreme Court Justice, legislative priorities, state of the nation, the economy, Homeland Security. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. In Homeland Security, there's going to be a situation where you're trying to track down terrorists and target them and keep the world safe. Here's the world arena, which is again a whole game in and of itself, where what's going on in the world arena. And this is some of the places where you're trying to target certain things, and there's tension that develops over time, and that's going to affect certain things. Your relationship with each of the different regions is going to be different, whether you're estranged or close or very close, and you want to have very close in certain circumstances. Here's regional alignment. I mean, again, I'm not even going to begin to tell you how to play this game because, number 1, I don't know, but number 2, it will not be complete. Hence, maybe from the first statement. Here's the diplomatic arena. United Nations. As I said, there's a lot in here, right? There's intel gathering, there's terrorist groups, cyber war, surprise, war progress. There you have it. So that is the main rule book there. Then you're going to have these different charts that you're going to refer to from time to time, depending on what actions you're taking. Here's the domestic charts book, D right there. And this is 20 pages for the domestic chart. And this is going to be all things domestic and dealing with your cabinet and congressional legislative initiatives and effects of past legislation. And you're trying to, you think of this from the standpoint of you're trying to create a legacy or a reputation of what your presidency stood for. So passing landmark legislation is going to be key to that. Here's congressional maneuvering and drama, greater society, State of the Union, domestic crisis, domestic failures, domestic terror. There's a lot of stuff in here. Scandal. There's going to be scandals. There's good times, hopefully. So this is all dealing with domestic charts. Then you have your world charts. And this is 20, well, that's a blank page, but 26 pages. I'm glad they said this is the end of the world charts there. So 26 pages of charts, and this is all diplomatic charts. UN actions, trade agreements, sanctions, military charts, cyber attacks. I mean, there's civil wars that are going on in different regions, enhanced strategic abilities, intel gathering. There's just so much going on here, right? And that's your world chart. So when you're on the world table, you're going to refer to this, and this is the different codes of what charts are in here. Then you have ally and rogue states. Now, this is a little bit thinner book, but this is, dealing with just that, ally and rogue states. So you want to have, you want to have good allies. You want to try to avoid rogue states, and that's how you deal with, some of the tension that's going on in some of the regions. But and this explains, your allies and rogue states and how they might change over time and how you deal with them. So there's that book. Then you have World Peer Russia Acts. So like, remember I was telling you before, like when Russia acts, well, then when Russia acts, you go to this book and follow its procedure and what's going on there. But if China acts, then you follow this book and follow its procedure. And China's going to do some stuff that's different. So separate books for each one of those, and those are just one little box on that chart there. Then you've got your presidential briefing, examples of play, and designer notes. So this is basically, the how to play. So this is a book that you're going to want to look through to figure out, all right, what the heck am I doing and how am I doing it? So this is kind of an example of play, and it's also going to have some explanations in here of some of the key, like the counter manifest and some aspects like that, and then give you a designer notes on this. All right, we're not done yet. Here's scenarios. So as I said, there's different scenarios in here. You've got scenario 1 is 2001 to 2004. Scenario 2 is 2005 2008. 3 is 8 to 12. 4 is 13 to 16. 5 is 17 to 20. And scenario 6 is 20. And then I think that you can... then there's a core scenario, which is a sandbox, which you just kind of set up and go. And I think that there might actually be a campaign game where you can just start, you just start at the beginning and just keep playing, right? I mean, I guess it all depends if you get reelected, right? I mean, because you're only supposed to serve 8 years if you get reelected, but who knows? Anyway, so there's all the different scenarios, what you're going to set up, and that's going to tell you all those different tracks and charts that we'll see when we get to the board. And I know I'm not even to the board yet, but that tells you where stuff goes. Here's all the counters, and there are a lot, and they are all, here's 1 of 5. But these are all administrative markers, and they're all pre-rounded and easy to pop out GMT counters. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but they're decent thickness there. And again, this is where you're going to keep track of stuff. And there's a lot to keep track of. So time for another initial impression. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to enjoy playing this. I want to see how this plays out. But they might have bitten off more than they can chew. I mean, there's a lot going on here. So I'm really interested in see how this plays without it not just being an administrative nightmare. There's so much to keep track of. As you see, there's so many different tables and books and charts you have to go to. And there's so many different tracks on the board. I'm really interested in see how this, if this is not too overwhelming for a solo player to keep track of all the stuff that's going on. I mean, maybe that's the intent, to give you the feel of what it's like to be president. It's overwhelming, but I don't know. That's one of my initial impressions is, oh man, is this something that would be better for a computer, right? And I know there's computer games that do this stuff, but are they going to be able to pull it off by translating this to a board game? I think they are. I think I'm optimistic, but man, there's just so much here. So here's some of your here's domestic master actions, and this is dual-sided and on good player aid stock there. Presidential master actions, and again, you get examples of some of these actions here. Presidential presence, where you're going to travel somewhere, use the bully pulpit to rally. So you're going to make a speech. You're going to diplomatic, going to do a UN speech here. Invite an ally to the White House to improve relations. Presidential trip. Ask for resignation of a Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, or Chief of Staff. So I mean, if you don't have the right person in that spot, you might, or if they're under a scandal, you might want to get rid of them. Here's your military actions. All the stuff you can do. and diplomatic master actions. And as it says here, diplomatic, only the POTUS, the Vice President, Secretary of State can do these. Military, only the POTUS and the Secretary of Defense. Presidential, only the POTUS. And domestic, only the POTUS, Vice President, and Chief of Staff can do. So those are kind of how you're divided up on who can do those actions. Then we have a lot of holding charts here. These are a little bit thicker, but this is your tension markers, terrorist group holding area. So this is, kind of a holding box to put counters on the track. Here's your war tracks, keeping track of different status of if there's more than war. God, if you have 5 wars going on, you're going to be really having, you're going to be a one-term president. But here's how it keeps track of all those different statuses. And depending on where it goes, is going to determine if that conflict's over or not. Then we get into the board here, which is, 1, 2 mounted boards here. We've got 6-sided dice and a 10-sided dice, and we have cards here. Oh my God! All right, let's get out the map here and see what we have. So we've got 2 boards here. I think this is just a along the side type board to keep track of certain things that are going on. Is this the domestic side here? And I'm probably going to have to go up Periscope. There's just too much to see here. So this right here is nuclear missile tracks, strategic capability tracks, bipartisan cooperation, pending bills, conflicts tracks. Oh, so this is like your international track here. So I wonder how this goes together. It looks like we have... that's year. Those are some stuff up there. Some boxes up there. Then we have, I think it goes like this. I'm going to move it over like this. I'm running out of table space here already. Okay, so this is the game. This is all the different tracks. See how this all lays out here. Okay. Whoa, okay, there we go. So, look at there. I don't even have enough room to get it all on the map here. So let's look at this side first. As I said, looks like there's some domestic stuff going on over here. This is where you're going to put your crises up there, the crisis cards. Here are certain tracks for the United Nations, your relationship with Congress, your relationship with media, Homeland Security, and economy. And when you roll on stuff that's affected by these tracks, you roll a 10-sided die. So you want to have these tracks high as possible, because what you have on there is the number you need to meet or roll under. So you can roll that number or lower, and then you've done a success on these different tracks. But as you can see, you can only go to 8 on some of these, and on economy you can only go to 7. So you're always going to have a chance of a failure on some of these. But and the media is probably going to be very fickle and up and down. So there's going to be things you do to try to boost your relationship on these tracks or to boost these numbers up, but that's a whole aspect of the game here. Then we have, maybe it goes, maybe this goes over here. I don't know how I'm going to set it up. I'll have to look at that later, but here, let's pull this over here because I'm running out of space on my table, which, that's another initial impression here. This is a big game. This takes up a lot of table space. This is a table hog. So, and for a solo game at that. So, just know that. So there's your president. There's your cabinet. With your vice president, chief of staff, secretary of state, secretary of defense, and you're going to pull counters out to determine who's going to play that role or who's going to be that role until you sack them. And then they'll have they'll have modifiers, hopefully, to modify their areas. You have cabinet effectiveness. You got the scandal table. You've got your here's that turn sequence chart. So here's basically the heart of the game right here. Here's the world chart. So you have all these different regions, and they're going to have a ton of counters in them on, for alignment, for intel, for regional crisis level. There's a lot, going on there. You also have way over here. Let's pull this over here. Take a look here. You've got Russia and China, and they have a 1 and 2. That's their posture. 2 is more aggressive. 1 is less aggressive. You got 2 levels of posture here. and then you have some other relationships with them, or your relationship with them over here as well, keeping track of that. So, and the rest of these are regions. And then you also have, it gets down to the detail of if you have some, aircraft carriers in the Indian Ocean or in the Eastern Pacific or in North Atlantic or the Mediterranean, then if you have them here, then they can actually they can add military support to wherever they're connected. So this one here supports these 3 regions. This one just does this, and so on. So when you're going to put military, or one of your actions is to put military support in some of these areas. You might want to do that if there's, a war going on, or if there's something that you need military support for, or you might want to pull it out of there. So there's that whole military aspect. And of course, your your Secretary of Defense is going to be helping you out with that. So, I think this is 1 year. You go through this 6 phases, and then that's 1 year. So you're going to be doing 6 times 4, 24 phases, I would imagine. And they're not just simple phases. There's a lot of stuff going on in those phases. So, in conclusion, I went on very long here. Why I can't do conclusions? Let's see some of the cards first, but I'll talk while I'm popping open cards. There's a lot going on here. I think that's one of my initial impressions is this looks amazing with everything that you can do, and it feels like they've thrown in the kitchen sink and they've tried to cover every aspect of a presidency that you might need to deal with. But that could be its downfall too, because there's a lot going on here. There's just so much. Let's see, I think these are all crisis cards. There's a lot of crisis cards. And I think the designer said that that there might be like 180 crisis cards, but you only maybe get through 100 maybe in a game. So again, you're not going to see everything. So and then of course how you react to it's going to be different, and what you see is different. And what's going on in the world might be different, and how your roles are going to be different. So there's a lot of replayability here. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So these are some of the crisis cards, as you can see here. So this is a cyber theft of sensitive intelligence. That's not good. Cards are decent, good quality GMT cards, good thickness. I don't think you necessarily have to shuffle these a lot. You're probably going to shuffle these and then draw. I don't know if there's a lot of reshuffling with the number of cards you have. But there's a lot of variety that's going on here with these different cards. And so this is kind of one of the big randomizers, and this is going to throw you curveballs during the game, and how you react to it is part of how you are being a president. Beloved legislature dies unexpectedly. So how do you deal with that? Camp David Summit. So quite a bit of cards there. As you can see, a lot of text on the cards. A lot of text in the books and charts that you have to refer to. So quite a bit there. So in conclusion, I think this is a very ambitious endeavor. I'm going to reserve my comments. Do I think they pulled it off? I think they might have pulled it off, but only for those who are willing to invest the time. This is not. Looks very daunting. This looks like there's a lot to go through. Again, I appreciate that the core mechanics and some of the game rules are not that complex. But when you have that many books that you have to refer to, and this kind of sequence that you have to follow, and that much text on a card, and these many different regions that you have to keep track of, there is just so much going on. So if they're trying to simulate the complexity and the overwhelming nature of the presidency, I think that they've accomplished it. But have they presented a playable game, especially in a solitaire format? Well, I'm going to be hopeful, and I think they might have, but again, I don't think this is for everybody. I think this is definitely an investment of time, effort, and tenacity to get into all this stuff. So anyway, that is what you get in a box of Mr. President. This is amazing. This is just, look at all that. Look at all those rule books. I thought Atlantic Chase was, gonna, death by 1,000 paper cuts. But I mean, there is just so much in here that it is truly, truly. This looks like a labor of love and an amazing game. So let's see how it plays. That's my next on my list. If you've played this, if you like it, if you hate it, if you are scared to death of it, let me know. Put it in the comments and let others learn from your experience. I'm looking inside the box to make sure I didn't leave anything. They didn't hide anything more in there. Love to know your thoughts on it. So drop them down below. Whew, this was a long one, but I mean, there's a lot in that box. Anyway, thanks all. Take care. Thanks for watching.